Local building and zoning code dictates that I'm not allowed to build a permanent structure here without permits or approvals. However, there's nothing in local code that states I am not allowed to aggressively organize firewood and logs into the shape of something that feels like a room. Naturally, today we're going to do the only reasonable thing. Today, we're going to add high-speed internet and a TV to something that does not legally count as a structure. Now you may be wondering, how am I going to install high-speed internet out to my stack of firewood? Well, I'm happy you asked because I drew this crude diagram here. Now this is the typical internet setup for most American homes connected to the grid. So first we have our modem. You have your contract with your ISP, and our modem connects our LAN, our local area network, to the internet itself. Now the modem connects to the router. Now the router is what provides a firewall, a barrier to help protect your house from the dark web. But the router also broadcasts a Wi-Fi signal, so all your wireless devices can and will connect to that router if you so choose. Now on the back of the router, there are usually four additional Ethernet ports. And those Ethernet ports you can connect Ethernet cable to. Now what those ports allow you to do is they allow you to extend your network to different areas of the house or wherever you need, your LAN to connect to. Now the only problem with the LAN ports is you're technically only allowed to run 300 feet of Ethernet cable without the signal really dropping and deteriorating. However, you can extend beyond 300 feet or add more Ethernet ports with network switches. So my setup here, from my router, I have an Ethernet line plugged in the back of the router that runs into the garage here. In the garage here, I have a network switch. So from the network switch, what we're going to do, we're going to run a temporary 200-foot run of Ethernet cable between the network switch and the garage out to my Roku in the Firewood. Now, the thing with most Roku devices, most Rokus connect to your local area network by way of Wi-Fi. However, because I don't have a Wi-Fi device at the end of this line, with this Roku, this is one of the more expensive Rokus, there is an Ethernet port. So what I'm simply going to do is just plug my Ethernet line into this Roku, and then I'm going to have a HDMI cable in between the Roku and the TV itself. Now the only thing about all of this, all of these devices require 120 VAC. So now the question is, how am I going to run power out to this stack of firewood? Well, I do have an outdoor receptacle, and I have a 100-foot extension cord, which I've already run out to the stack of firewood, so we do have safe, secure power out in the stack of firewood. And legalities of extension cords, well, fire code does allow extension cords for a period of up to 90 days. You're allowed to use extension cords for temporary applications. So this is the network switch in the garage. This is the Ethernet line that feeds this network switch. So this Ethernet line feeds back to the main router, which is right next to the modem. Now also attached to this network switch, I have an old router which I have programmed to act as a Wi-Fi extender, so this gives me good Wi-Fi signal in the garage. Now up here, this is our 200-foot run of temporary Ethernet line that's going to go out to the stack of firewood and give us high-speed internet. So from that network switch, I have this Ethernet line running over the headers for the garage door, so we'll just kind of sneak it out the bottom corner of the garage door here so it doesn't obstruct anything, but also keeps it out of the way. There's our extension cord, so we'll feed this Ethernet line through the same piece of conduit. Alright, just finished mounting the TV. Now this is not a waterproof television. This is just an old television that probably passed its prime, but we're going to make good use of it anyway. Swivel mount, 2x4, 2x4 attached to the wood stack. We have 120 power. We have our Ethernet line. So now let's plug everything in, see if it works. We'll provide AC power to the TV, AC power to the Roku box. HDMI line from the Roku box goes in the back of the TV here. Now, does everything work? So everything's working beautifully. Now I have a TV out here, high-speed internet. The only thing that bothers me, I went on the YouTube app, and I found this jackass called the Old Soul Millennial channel. Look at what this guy built. Firewood survival shelter. Stole my idea. Can you believe that? Now we do need a door. Now because this isn't a structure, this will not be a door. What it will be is a humidity control valve to adjust how fast the wood seasons, of course. You know, one of the benefits to saving every little piece of hardware that comes your way is when you need a specific fastener or an oddball hinge, you have it for projects such as these. Well, here's my tip of the day for you. If you're sending screws through very dry pieces of lumber and you don't have a bit to pre-drill your hole, something you can do to help prevent that wood from splitting is to start off your driver in reverse and spin that fastener on that wood until it starts to smoke. It heats up to the point where then you actually can drive the fastener forward and it kind of burns its way through the wood, and that really helps to prevent the wood from splitting open. Beautiful. All right, let's try hanging this door now. So I have a couple furring strips on the bottom to pick the door up off the ground. Alright, I have a few screws in there. Let's try and remove these furring strips. I'm going to put a couple more screws in there, but that's going to work out very nicely. Looking good. If someone were to ask me what makes me happy, well, my wife and daughter obviously would come first, but this is a very close second. What am I making here? I'm making good old-fashioned maple syrup. What bothers me about the large-scale maple syrup producers, which I understand why they do it this way, but the grove of maple trees that they tap, they're sugar bush. They run plastic tubing from each tree down to a main line, and they pull a vacuum on that line. Sometimes it gets stored in plastic tanks, but I think a lot of people are starting to wake up. Are microplastics harming us? Well, I believe microplastics are definitely endocrine disruptors. So I think the best thing to do is to limit microplastics as much as possible. The way I make syrup here, the only time my sap comes into contact with plastics is when I go to the tree, pour the sap from the aluminum bucket into 5-gallon plastic water jugs. That's the only plastic in my system. I'd love to eliminate those 5-gallon jugs, but they were just cheap, economical, and hopefully I'll replace them with something better in the near future. But aside from that, stainless steel pan, stainless steel coil, that's my pre-warmer, stainless steel evaporator pans, and the sap goes into glass bottles. It's about as good as it gets.